If your blood sugar numbers have been creeping up, I want to start with something a lot of people don't expect to hear from a doctor. Breakfast toast and cereal aren't automatically safe just because the box says whole grain. That's not me telling you to panic. And it's definitely not me telling you to throw out your doctor's advice. It's me telling you that after years of practicing medicine and reading the research closely, I've found there's a real gap between what gets said in a rushed office visit and what the actual science supports. So today I want to slow down and do this properly. We're going to walk through 6 foods that have real, published research behind them for blood sugar management. Not folk remedies, not miracle cures, actual studies. I'm going to tell you honestly what the evidence shows, where it's strong and where it's still preliminary. I'm not going to inflate the numbers to make this more dramatic than it is, because you deserve the real picture, not a sales pitch. Here's why this matters so much. The CDC estimates that around 38 million Americans have diabetes, and over 97 million adults have prediabetes. The part that should genuinely concern you, the large majority of people with prediabetes don't know it. No symptoms yet, nothing dramatic, just numbers quietly drifting in the wrong direction. So let's get into it, starting with number 6. Before we do, if you're the kind of person who wants real evidence-based health information without the hype, hit subscribe and the notification bell so you don't miss what's coming. And if you find this useful, a thumbs up genuinely helps other people find this video. Alright, let's go. Number 6. Apple cider vinegar. Let's start with one that gets mocked a lot. Apple cider vinegar. I understand the skepticism. A lot of vinegar claims online are wildly overblown, but there is legitimate clinical research here, so let's separate the real findings from the hype. Multiple small randomized controlled trials have tested apple cider vinegar in people with type 2 diabetes, typically using doses around 15 to 30 milliliters, roughly 1 to 2 tablespoons, per day. A systematic review and meta-analysis of these trials found that vinegar produced a modest but statistically significant drop in fasting blood sugar, on the order of about 20 milligrams per deciliter on average, along with a small reduction in A1C. That's a real effect, but I want to be honest with you, it's modest. It is not a replacement for medication, and results vary a lot between studies. Some trials found stronger effects on after-meal blood sugar than on fasting numbers. Here's the mechanism, and it's a genuinely interesting one. The acetic acid in vinegar slows down how quickly your stomach empties food into your small intestine. Picture it like a traffic officer at a busy on-ramp, metering how fast cars merge onto the highway instead of letting them all flood in at once. When your stomach empties more slowly, glucose from your meal enters your bloodstream more gradually instead of all at once. That's especially relevant for older adults, because insulin secretion tends to become less efficient with age, so a slower, gentler glucose entry gives your body an easier job to do. Practically, here's how to use it safely. Always dilute it, 1 to 2 tablespoons in a large glass of water, ideally about 15 to 20 minutes before a carbohydrate-containing meal. Never drink it straight. The acidity can erode tooth enamel over time and irritate your esophagus. And if you're on blood sugar medication or diuretics, talk to your doctor first, because vinegar can have additive effects and in rare cases contribute to low blood sugar or interact with certain drugs. Some people like pairing it with a small amount of cinnamon. There's early research suggesting cinnamon compounds may have their own modest insulin sensitivity benefits, though the evidence for cinnamon alone is weaker and more mixed than for vinegar. It's a reasonable pairing, just don't expect a dramatic multiplier effect. Number 5. Fatty fish. Number 5 is fatty fish. Salmon, mackerel, sardines, and similar cold water fish rich in omega-3 fatty acids. We usually think of fish as a heart health food, and it is, but there's a well-established connection to blood sugar regulation too, and it runs through inflammation. Large observational studies, including long-running cohort research out of Harvard School of Public Health, have found that people who regularly eat fish, particularly fatty fish, tend to have a meaningfully lower long-term risk of developing type 2 diabetes compared to people who rarely eat it. I want to be precise here. This is observational data, meaning it shows an association, not absolute proof of cause and effect, though the mechanism behind it is well understood. Here's that mechanism. Chronic low-grade inflammation is one of the most under-discussed drivers of insulin resistance. Elevated inflammatory signaling molecules called cytokines interfere with how insulin communicates with your cells. Think of it like static on a phone line that makes the message harder to get through clearly. Omega-3 fats, specifically EPA and DHA, have real anti-inflammatory properties that help quiet that static down. This matters more as we age because the mitochondria in our cells, the tiny structures that produce energy, become somewhat less efficient over time, and that inefficiency tends to generate more oxidative stress, which feeds right back into the inflammatory cycle. Omega-3s help interrupt that loop. Practically, aim for fatty fish 2 to 3 times a week in servings of roughly 4 to 6 ounces. Baking, grilling, or poaching preserves the benefit, Deep frying adds back inflammatory fats and can undercut what you're trying to achieve. Pairing it with olive oil and leafy greens is a genuinely good combination. The fat helps you absorb fat-soluble nutrients from the greens, and olive oil brings its own anti-inflammatory polyphenols to the table. Number 4, whole eggs. Number 4 is one that surprises people. Whole eggs, yolk included. For decades, eggs got a bad reputation because of dietary cholesterol concerns. That guidance has shifted substantially. Larger, more recent reviews looking at randomized controlled trials have generally found that egg consumption does not meaningfully worsen cardiovascular risk markers for most healthy people, and current dietary guidance in the U.S. has moved away from strict cholesterol limits for the general population. I do want to flag one honest caveat. People with existing cardiovascular disease or certain lipid conditions should still talk to their doctor about how many eggs make sense for them individually. This isn't a blanket unlimited eggs for everyone finding. On the blood sugar side specifically, the evidence is a bit more modest than some of the more dramatic claims out there. What we do know reasonably well is that a high-protein breakfast, and eggs are a good source of complete protein, tends to produce a gentler post-meal blood sugar rise than a breakfast built mainly around refined carbohydrates, and tends to improve satiety, which helps with overall eating patterns through the day. Here's why protein matters more as we age. After roughly age 65, muscle tissue becomes somewhat resistant to the signals that normally trigger muscle protein building, something researchers call anabolic resistance. This connects directly to blood sugar because muscle is the single largest site in your body for clearing glucose out of the bloodstream. More functional muscle essentially means more storage capacity for the glucose circulating after a meal. Practically, 2 to 3 whole eggs at breakfast, prepared without excessive added fat, is a reasonable target for most people. Adding a pinch of turmeric and black pepper is a nice touch. Turmeric's active compound, curcumin, has some evidence for supporting healthy inflammatory response, and black pepper genuinely does significantly increase curcumin's absorption. Just don't expect curcumin from a pinch of turmeric to function like a medication. The amounts in food are modest. Number 3, berries. Number 3 is genuinely one of the better studied categories on this list. Blueberries, blackberries, and strawberries. Clinical trials, including controlled feeding studies out of research groups in the US and UK, have found that regular berry consumption, often blueberry-focused, can improve insulin sensitivity over several weeks in people with elevated fasting insulin or metabolic syndrome. Some of these studies have shown improvements in the range of high teens to low 20% over a 6 to 12-week period. That's a meaningful effect for a food, though I'd stop short of calling it equivalent to a pharmaceutical intervention. That framing overstates what a single trial in a specific population tells us. The mechanism centers on anthocyanins, the deep blue-red-purple pigments in berries. These compounds appear to act as antioxidants that help protect insulin-producing beta cells in the pancreas from oxidative damage, and there's evidence they support the function of GLUT4, a transporter protein that essentially acts as a doorway, letting glucose move from your bloodstream into muscle cells when insulin signals it to. Berries also have a genuinely favorable glycemic profile compared to most sweet foods. Blueberries sit in the moderate range on the glycemic index, so they satisfy a craving for something sweet without the same spike you'd get from candy or juice. Practically, about a cup of mixed berries daily is a reasonable, well-supported target. Frozen berries retain their anthocyanin content essentially as well as fresh, so don't feel like you need to pay premium prices for fresh berries out of season. Pairing berries with plain, unsweetened, full-fat Greek yogurt is a smart combination. The protein and fat further blunt the blood sugar response, and there's growing research connecting a more diverse gut microbiome, which fermented dairy can support, to better post-meal glucose control. Number 2, avocado. Number 2 might be the most counterintuitive food on this list. Avocado, a fat food for blood sugar. Stay with me. A well-known randomized controlled trial out of Loma Linda University had participants eat 1 avocado daily as part of a meal, and the group showed reductions in belly fat, specifically visceral fat, the kind that surrounds internal organs, compared to a control group eating a similar meal without avocado over the course of the study. Visceral fat matters enormously here because it's one of the more significant contributors to insulin resistance in the body. I'll be straightforward. This was one well-designed study, not a mountain of replicated trials, so I hold it with appropriate confidence but not absolute certainty. The proposed mechanisms are reasonable and grounded in what we know about fat biology. Monounsaturated fat, primarily oleic acid, is associated with healthier cell membrane function, which may make insulin receptors more responsive. Think of it as an old stiff door hinge getting oiled so it swings more easily. Avocados are also notably rich in potassium, which plays a role in normal insulin secretion from the pancreas. There's early laboratory research into a compound called avocatin B and its effects on fat metabolism in muscle tissue, though that work is still in earlier stages and hasn't yet been well established in large human trials. I mention it because it's an interesting research direction, not because it's a proven mechanism yet. Practically half to 1 avocado a day, ideally as part of a meal rather than a supplement or juice. Sliced over eggs, mashed with a squeeze of lime, or added to a salad all work well. Pairing with tomatoes is a nice touch. The fat in avocado improves your absorption of lycopene, tomatoes' signature antioxidant compound. Number 1. Onion, including the part you're throwing away. And now, number 1. The one I think will genuinely surprise you, because it's something most people already have in their kitchen, and are probably discarding the most useful part of the onion, and specifically its outer skin and papery layers. Let's be careful and honest here, because this is where a lot of online content really overstates the science. There is real, published research on onion and blood sugar. Some small clinical trials have found that regular raw onion consumption can meaningfully lower fasting blood sugar in people with diabetes. But the study designs are often small, short-term, and conducted in specific populations, so I'd describe this evidence as promising and worth trying, not as dramatically proven as some of the more sensational health content claims. The compounds of interest are quercetin, a flavonoid concentrated heavily in the outer layers and skin of the onion, and sulfur-containing compounds like S-methylcysteine sulfoxide found in the flesh. In laboratory and animal studies, quercetin has shown the ability to inhibit alpha-glucosidase, an enzyme in your small intestine that breaks complex carbohydrates down into absorbable glucose. Slowing that enzyme means carbohydrates convert to blood glucose a bit more gradually, which is, notably, a similar mechanism to how the diabetes medication acarbose works, though at a much smaller magnitude from a food source. There's also early research into onion compounds and their interaction with enzymes involved in GLP-1 regulation, one of the body's natural blood sugar regulating hormone pathways. This is an active and interesting area of research, though again, it's early. Here's a genuinely practical underused tip. The outer 2 or 3 dry papery layers of an onion, the ones almost everyone peels off and throws away, contain a much higher concentration of quercetin than the inner flesh. Rather than discarding them, you can steep them in hot water for about 10 minutes to make a simple onion skin tea, or add them to a pot of soup or broth while it simmers, then strain them out before serving. This is a traditional practice in parts of Eastern Europe and East Asia. Raw onion, especially red onion, generally retains more quercetin than cooked onion, since heat does reduce the compound somewhat. There's some evidence that olive oil's own polyphenols support the absorption of flavonoids like quercetin, and olive oil independently slows gastric emptying the same way vinegar does. I want to say something plainly. None of these 6 foods are a cure. None of them replace medication if your doctor has prescribed it, and none of them replace the foundational things that move the needle most on blood sugar: consistent movement, adequate sleep, stress management, and an overall eating pattern built around whole foods and fewer refined carbohydrates. What these foods offer is a set of small, evidence-supported nudges that can meaningfully add up over time, especially when you stack a few of them together consistently. I've seen patients make real measurable progress by making small sustained changes like these, not overnight and not from any single food, but from consistency over months. If you're managing prediabetes or diabetes, please bring these ideas to your own doctor or dietitian and build a plan together. This video is educational, not a substitute for personalized medical care. If today's video helped you understand your options a little better, hit subscribe and the notification bell so you catch future videos. I'm covering this kind of evidence-based, no-hype health content regularly. A like helps this reach other people looking for the same honest answers. And don't forget to check out my other videos on this channel. I've covered related topics that build on a lot of what we talked about today. Drop a comment and let me know, which of these 6 foods surprised you the most, and what topic should I cover next? Tell me which one you'd want to see first, or suggest your own. Thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next one.